Hey, Carol, this week we're taking flight.
Yes, we are, but we aren't leaving our gardens, Dee.
That seems like a riddle.
Not really. We're taking flight because this week's topic is birds in the garden.
Birds in the garden, one of my favorite things. Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about 1/3 of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening, and we really want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Dee.
Hello, Carol. What is your garden looking like today?
Well, before I get to my garden, you got up and went and did something. We need a Masha moment. We haven't had a clear Masha moment.
Well, okay. So my seed keeper is out on, my file that I keep all my seeds in. It's out on the kitchen table, and I heard the rattle of seeds, and I saw a little gray paw snagging them. So I had to get up and tell her to get off the table.
So how is she doing otherwise?
She is growing like crazy, and she caught another mouse the other day. She's a heck of a mouser.
That is good.
That's one of her jobs. And for such a little cat, she's a good one. And let's see, chases things all over the house. And basically, I just try to keep her out of trouble. And this morning, my husband woke me up at 6 a.m. and he goes, I can't find her anywhere. And I was like, uh-oh. So we shut our door to our bedroom at night because otherwise she'd just drive us crazy. So I came out and all I had to do was go, Masha, kitty, kitty, kitty. And the next thing I knew, there she was right by my feet. So she's fine.
That's good. You'll have to figure out later what she did. All right. Now I will talk about my garden since we've had a proper Masha moment. So, Dee, we had a record high last week, and I forget, I think it was Wednesday, 72 degrees. Beat the record from 1922 that was 70.
Yeah.
But it was really cloudy all day. So it was, strange, very strange. Thursday was also lovely, not quite as warm, but in the 60s. I cut back the clematis vines, started in on some of the other perennials. In the sunroom, my snapdragons and my petunia seeds are up. My onions are up. I haven't seen any lavender yet, although I had 2 weed seeds show up. I need to be more careful.
Weed seeds show up in my potting soil too. Brand new potting soil. I had some sunflower seeds in it. What's
this? I think was Carol's sloppy handling of seeds.
Okay, got it.
So, the crocuses and irises have been blooming like crazy. I put on my Instagram story last night. Some bees buzzing around. They're amazing. And my sister posted on her Instagram that her saucer magnolia was blooming, and that is about 6 weeks early.
Yeah, about a month early. The weather's just been kind of crazy. We had tornadoes last night.
I know. Tell me.
February. We don't usually get tornadoes in February. So you know how you described your 72 degree day? Okay, so we had a 64 degree day like that. And it was just cloudy all day and weird. And my son and I talked on the phone, and I was like, we won't have bad weather tonight. It's only 64 degrees. Well, I was wrong. There were tornadoes all over. They started in the west and started moving across mostly Norman. Some of the western part of Oklahoma City got them too, but it was something else. But anyway, everything's okay. Nobody was killed. Some people were hurt, but not badly. I wanted to talk about these bird feeders that I got from King's Yard.
I would like you to talk about them. I saw it on your Instagram.
I did really a little Instagram video yesterday. And so we have a discount code. People get 20% off, but you don't order it from their website. You actually order it from their Amazon store. I don't know why it makes a difference, but apparently it does. And that code goes on for the year. So we'll put it in our show notes. And I got 2 of them. And one of them, you can put 3 different kinds of seed in.
Cool.
And it's a little red house. It's super cute. I'll do a post on it this week later. And then I got a hummingbird feeder, and I normally don't feed hummingbirds, but Bill got really excited. So I have a feeling I'll be mixing up food for hummingbirds. Also in my garden, I pricked out my
Wait a minute. So that discount code, we're going to put it in our newsletter. That way, if you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, you're going to have to get the code.
Okay. Sounds good. I also pricked out my onion and leek seedlings, and they're out in the cold frames. And I love that little dibby tool.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. I'll put another link in our show notes. I can see how handy it's going to be.
Right. It's just wonderful for pricking out seedlings and stuff. It's just great. And I planted my verbena bantam seeds. Okay, so those stupid things. I don't know does the verbena bonariensis need dark too?
I don't know. I saw that in the show notes and I thought, well, the vanity variety that I got from All America Selections, it's not getting 4 weeks of darkness. I winter sowed it.
Bantam says it needs it. And then it also said that if the seeds so you leave it in darkness until they germinate. And if they haven't germinated in 4 weeks, then you have to stick it in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks. Can I just say I hate seeds like that?
Pesky little things.
Yeah. I don't like it because you're sowing seed for all this other stuff.
All right.
And so you've got this one out here, anyway, it kind of irritated me. Let's hope it's worth it. And then I also sowed some Gaillardia, some Fairy Queen Salvia, some Viking Explorer Rose Begonias, which we got from All America Selection.
Well, I got that one last year. I didn't get it this year.
You did?
It was very lovely. Very lovely.
Well, that's why I did it, because I really don't care about begonias that much, but you said it was wonderful, so I did it. And then I did some other stuff too. And actually I have some containers soaking in bleach water in my sink so that I can reuse those. Anyway, it has been really busy, and I noticed something cool.
What's that?
I didn't put it in our show notes. Out front where I planted all of those daffodils, all the white daffodils.
Yeah.
The Great White Daffodil Project, they are up. They're up.
I saw that on your Instagram too. You act surprised that they came up.
I don't think it was surprised. I think it was just excited.
Okay.
So that's all I got. What about the next quote or the first quote?
Okay. And if the whole wide world stops singing and all the stars go dark, I'll keep the light on in my soul, keep a bluebird in my heart. Miranda Lambert.
Yeah, that's a good one. We all need
the
bluebird.
Do you have bluebird houses in your garden?
I do. I have 3, but you know what? And I have lots of bluebirds, and I hear them out. I hear the males out singing. So we're already full into bluebird season. The bluebirds here, I don't know what time they get there in Indiana, but the scouts get here at the very beginning of February, usually.
Well, here I will see bluebirds occasionally at the feeders year round.
Really?
Yes. And I have 3 bluebird houses, and they will all be inhabited.
Yeah, it'll be that way here too. And so some of mine also inhabit the trees that are they're above the lower pasture. And that goes against everything that you ever read online or anywhere about bluebirds. You're supposed to have an open area like my upper pasture. You're supposed to put bluebirds on that one particular fence, et cetera, et cetera. I did all that. And you know what? They do what they want to do because they're birds.
They are. And so I will get bluebirds in all 3 feeders. And I've already taken, not feeders, birdhouses.
Mm-hmm.
And I removed the nests late last year. So the old stuff is out of there.
They do not nest in dirty houses. And what'll happen, mine aren't nesting yet. They'll start, but I will start yanking out all the sparrow nests because the sparrows try to take them away. And so I pull out the sparrow nests over and over again and keep them clean until the bluebirds get in them.
And I'm anxious to find out, not anxious, I'm interested to find out if robins come back and make a nest on my light fixture by my back door like they did last year. Because a lot of times they'll come, if mama's still around, she'll come back to the same spot. And so I'll start watching, see if she does, and I'll let her.
I know, me too. My son had barn swallows up by his deal, and he let them nest. And he was like, "Only I would do that because of you, Mom." And I said, "I know."
So let's talk
So
about some
there you go.
flowers for hummingbirds and other birds in the garden.
So I wrote a blog post last year, or maybe the fall before, and it was about 10 plants to naturally attract them. And that post did really, really well because people love
They
hummingbirds.
do.
And I'm okay with you feeding hummingbirds with a feeder. I don't do it a lot because I don't like to deal with ants, but this hummingbird feeder I have actually has a baffle for the ants too. Um, One reason you might want to feed them is because they start showing up here in April and there isn't anything for them to drink from yet.
Yeah, and that's what the local bird food store, they say that's a good reason is when they show up here, and it'll be mid-April for us. Putting out your feeder helps to attract them to stay, and then you want to quickly follow up with as many flowers as you can for them to eat from. And the one I think of all the time is salvias.
Yeah, they like salvias. They like penstemon,
Yep.
which is an earlier flower than salvia. They like coral honeysuckle, which is a native. Some of the penstemons are native too. I grow several of both of those. In fact, so quickly about coral honeysuckle, if people are thinking about planting it, there are two major ones that are selections of native coral honeysuckle. And one is Major Wheeler, and the other one is Dropmore Scarlet. Of the two, Major Wheeler has many more blooms, but it blooms a little later than Dropmore Scarlet. I have both of them in my garden. And I always tell people that they should definitely grow both of those because not only do they help hummingbirds, but they also help the snowberry clearwing moth, which is a native moth to the US. And so they're a host plant for that too.
You also list Monarda bee balm, which is a lovely plant. Always think of that as the flower with the bad hair day.
Yeah, it's the flower with the bad hair day. And all of those little, I mean, it has lots and lots of places for the hummingbird to put its little beak in. So yeah, it's a good one. Crossvine is another good one. If you can grow crossvine, Carol can't.
I can't.
It
would die back. I think it's root hardy, but when you think about a vine and a crossvine and you want it to cover something, root hardy and then having to pull the whole dead mess down. And well, we do that with clematis, but.
Well, the same thing. I mean, honestly, here in my garden, because I'm north of central Oklahoma, and also I live out in the country. And so sometimes my crossvine dies all the way to the ground and I have to start over. So I love Jacob Klein Monarda as I'm looking through my post. And then there's good old Russian sage.
Yes, Russian sage, which some people like and some people don't. I have some. It never really does a lot in my garden that the hummingbirds are all going to get excited. Oh, look, it's Carol's Russian sage. It's just a plant or two. And then I tried a dwarf variety last year, and I'm going to be interested to see if that comes back. But
none of the dwarf varieties have come back in my garden. That may be me. It may not be them. But because I know some people in Tulsa who have successfully grown, like denim and lace is one of the ones in particular. But I have had no luck with them. Good old plain Russian sage does fine here if it's in a place that doesn't get hardly any water at all. And then there's our favorite plant.
Well, Dee, this is the part where why don't you just tell us the botanical name of Russian sage so we can laugh and laugh and laugh?
Ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Perovskia atriplicifolia. I did pretty good.
Perovskia atriplicifolia. Yeah, you did pretty good. I'll give you credit.
It's a pretty hard one. And so then our favorite plant from several seasons is Agostiki Blue Fortune.
Agastache.
Or Agostiki or Agastache, however you want to pronounce it.
Really, or just Blue Fortune.
Yeah. Blue Fortune and Ice Hyssop. How about that? That's the only one in my garden that does really well. Some of the other ones do great in pots on my deck. And some of the ones that have the rosy colors are especially attractive to hummingbirds.
And the Blue Fortune has come back reliably for me for probably 10 years, which is good for perennial like that.
I lost mine last year. I think I lost all of them. But we had it was rough last year. It was too hot.
I did have I say had like it's not coming back. I have planted a dwarf blue fortune out here outside my den window, and I'll be curious to see if that little baby comes back because it's around the bird feeder.
I didn't know there was a dwarf blue fortune.
Yeah. And if we had done our homework, I would have said, oh, and the variety is.
Well, we can put that in the newsletter. Another reason to read it.
Yeah, we can put that in the newsletter. There you go.
You'll have to send it to me because it's my week to do the newsletter. And then let's talk a little bit about autumn sage. Can you grow autumn sage as far north as you are?
I do not believe that autumn sage. No.
Okay, so it was found in Texas and Salvia gregii, and some people call it Greg's sage. And it's a great one. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, its pink preference is, I think, the best pink variety out there. And then another type of salvia, Van Hootii, Wendy's Wish. So Wendy's Wish is a variety of Salvia Van Hootii. So it may actually be Salvia hybridus. But Salvia Wendy's Wish is another great salvia. I think it's a patented plant. Anyway, both of those are great for hummingbirds too.
So I might have to eat my words. So I'm looking that up, and they're saying it's hardy to 6A, which is what I am. So it might be worth sticking one in the ground and see what happens.
Yeah, don't fall for one of the purple or blue ones because they tend to be even less hardy. And also they just don't perform well. Most people have trouble with them. The pink ones are solid. The red ones are solid.
All right. I'll check it out. Your favorites next.
Oh, I love phlox. Is that what you're talking about? It's phlox?
Yep.
I love phlox paniculata. It's not my favorite flower, but I have a lot of it in my garden because it's easy. Easy is good.
It is easy. It is, especially if you will forgive it its occasional powdery mildew.
Right. And certain varieties are better about powdery mildew. I don't think we have as much trouble with powdery mildew if it is grown in the sun because of our wind. We don't have as much humidity and we have a lot of wind, which helps dry all that stuff out. Bright Eyes is an old variety, and honestly, Bright Eyes is fabulous. It does not get powdery mildew in my garden. And then I have a pink one that is just a pass along that does really well. And I have Gina. So let's talk a minute about Gina. I was told that Gina it had more nectar than any other one. It was more popular with butterflies. It was the best one to grow. So I really made an effort to get it to go in my garden. And it does have much smaller blooms or florets. Yes. I have not noticed that butterflies like it better. I have not noticed that anything likes it better.
And that's Jeana.
Right. Gina. It's pretty, and it's kind of a purple, kind of a lilac. It's just up to you on that one.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good list of plants you could put in your garden that would attract hummingbirds. And like we said, you could put a feeder out early. They're kind of hard to keep feeders going all through the summer because of the ant problem. But if you put the feeder out, attract them, and then follow up with the flowers, you'll get them to stick around.
Also, feeders attract honeybees. So if somebody in your neighborhood has honeybees, you might end up with them at your feeder instead of hummingbirds.
You'll end up with all kinds of bees at that in the height of summer.
Because especially as nectar sources dry up, they have to get it from somewhere. So that is our flower topic. Ooh, we did a lot of flower.
Well, the other thing you can do if you're going to attract birds to your garden, you don't want to just plant pretty flowers. Right. You need big shrubs for cover so that they have a place to hide. Because here, like the hawks and the owls will try to get them. And so putting shrub for cover is a great idea. And I was doing some research for Family Handyman. And Nature Hills has a whole line of shrubs, and there are probably other places too, which are branded with the Audubon label.
Yes.
And so they've been specifically chosen because they are good for birds, either providing good cover or
nesting spots.
berries,
Yeah.
nesting spots, or berries for them to eat. Most of them are native,
Mhm.
which is nice.
And the other thing you can do to help birds in your garden, there are two things. One is don't spray insecticides because they need insects, especially in the spring, to feed their young.
Yep.
Most, so in the spring, they switch over birds that eat seeds. They switch over from seeds over to insects because young need the protein in order to grow. And that's something that the scientists have figured out from studying them extensively. So, if you kill off all the bugs in your garden, you're not going to have any birds. And then also, you want to keep your cat indoors. I know cats in the garden
That
are
is true.
sweet and cute and all that, but cats in the garden will be a problem with birds.
So my neighbor's cat comes over here and he'll trip my doorbell camera, and
Mhm.
he assures me that the cat is too lazy and slow to catch birds. And I'm thinking, well, if the cat keeps away moles and mice,
Right.
I don't care. And sometimes there'll be two cats under the bird feeder. I'm like, get out of here. And I go out and
Chase 'em
throw
off.
ice at him or
Yeah.
something.
Masha will be an indoor cat. Toonses was not an indoor cat. He went in and out, but that was not because of me. And my neighbor has two cats, which have been showing up recently because our bird feeders are off our back deck, and I just chase them off. I have no control over my neighbor's cat.
That's true. The other thing is there are some flowers that if you leave the seed heads, that also is good for birds, especially finches. And there's always the classic picture of a finch on top of a
Coneflower.
Yeah.
Coneflower, Gaillardia, Rudbeckia, those are all really good for finches. They love them. So, but you have in here, we know birds spread seeds.
That is true. But we also want to back up one thing. I found an article that birds can be pollinators. So those hummingbirds, they can actually be pollinating those flowers, which is interesting. I don't know if any other birds pollinate flowers, but hummingbirds can.
They'd have to be a bird that ate nectar, and I can't imagine what that would be. So, anything else?
Well, I will say that birds will spread seed, and so we get like mulberry tree seedlings coming up all over. And my neighbor yesterday, he asked me, he said, I have a nice mulberry seedling. Should I plant that out? I'm saying, absolutely not. You just cut that out. And I think his wife told him the same thing. I said, she's right.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
I have mulberries all over because they're native here, and I have mulberries all down around the edges.
These are the Asian mulberries. These are not the native ones.
Mine are the native ones, but still they spread like wildfire too. So
yeah, they spread like birds.
Yes, they do that. Shall I do the next quote?
All right, you shall.
Robins are my dolls. I am glad you love the blossoms so well. I hope you love birds too. It is economical. It saves going to heaven. That's Emily Dickinson, and that was from a letter that she wrote.
That is an unusual quote for us, but
it is. So
it is about birds, which is the theme of the thing. So in the vegetable garden, the one thing we thought to talk about was how do you beat the birds to the berries?
Yeah. And also which plants you can plant for birds if you'd like to, like service berries.
If you would like, service berry, lovely native small tree. Might get devoured by the birds. I never pick the service berries, although they are edible, but they are tiny.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of them.
They can totally have my service berries. And in fact, my service berry tree was really, really small when it came here. And now it's gotten pretty big. And I get a lot of questions from people about where to buy a service berry. And I don't
at the service berry store.
Yeah. I just ordered it online. That's all I remember about it. I don't remember where I got it from. Whoever had one. Because they can be hard to find.
They are often sold at our garden centers here.
Not here.
So you can find them. Both of my sisters, I recommended service berries, and they were able to find them locally. Most of the time, you're going to get them as a multi-trunked tree.
Yeah. Yeah.
They grow in a cluster. So the other thing I say is that fruit will drop. And if you're concerned about your patio and walkway staying pristine, don't plant a service berry next to it. It'll be a mess for a while and you'll be mad.
It will be a mess for a while. Masha is lying right now on top of my table, and she's lying in the sun. So that's another Masha second. All right. So strawberries, you wrote an article for
I
the
did.
Big Family Handyman on how to grow them.
Well, and the thing about strawberries and birds is the most annoying thing is to go out and see a nice, juicy strawberry ready to eat, and then you turn it over and it's been plucked out by the birds.
Yep.
The backside or something.
Yep.
So do you cover your strawberries to keep the birds out?
No. I am too lazy. I'm not going to do that.
I am too lazy too. And then I hear these stories about birds getting caught up in the netting, and then it's a bad thing because then they can get swooped up by hawks and stuff. And I really don't want to go out and find birds in the netting. So just plant enough for both of you.
Yeah, don't worry about it because you're going to have, sow bugs, roly-polies are going to get some of your strawberries. Turtles might get some of your strawberries. Yes, I've had a turtle that ate some of mine. It just is part of it.
That has not happened for me.
That's because you don't have any turtles near your strawberries.
Every once in a while.
Not near your strawberries, I guess.
Nope. How about blueberries? I don't grow blueberries because of the acidic soil, but you said you had them in containers for a long time.
I did. I grew them in containers for a really long time. And the cardinals enjoyed those blueberries. Yes, they did. One year it got really, really cold, and about a year and a half ago, it might have been the year of 2020 when the great ice storm came and it broke off some limbs of my blueberry shrubs in my containers. And I thought, you know what? I don't need those. I'll just buy blueberries at the store. And so I quit growing them. But yes, you can grow them in containers. And the nice part is that you can, control the acidity. And this is the part where people always ask me, well, how much sulfur do you put in there? And I'm like, I don't measure it. I just poured some in every year. I know I'm a terrible.
Well, and this is where Carol says, I have twice tried to grow blueberries in raised beds thinking, oh yeah, I'll control the acidity. And I didn't do very well. And so what once was a blueberry bed is now the strawberry bed.
Exactly. It is really hard to do. And I've tried doing it in raised beds and it didn't work. So my best luck was containers, but eventually I lost them. And then I was like, I don't want them that bad. So let's talk about blackberries. You can grow blackberries in Oklahoma like a champ.
You can grow them in Indiana like a champ too. And I have planted them and I thought, this is a big mess. It's briars. It's a big mess. And so I thought, I'm getting rid of this. I will say, if you're going to plant blackberries, plant the thornless blackberries.
I was going to say plant thornless ones and plant one in here. Plant the ones that have Native American names or American Indian names, because those were all bred between, most of them. I'm not going to say all because there might be some outlier, but Arkansas University and Oklahoma State University entered together and created these varieties, and they do really, really well. And they have really big berries, which if I'm going to grow them, I want the ones with really big berries. But here's a secret. There's a blackberry farm about 5 miles from my house. So guess where I go get blackberries if I'm so
wait a minute. I'm trying to think. So at the blackberry farm?
Could be. And then I also have I have a dewberry, which I bought down in Texas. It's kind of a sprawling, I wouldn't even call it a shrub. It's a sprawling thing. And it's right next to my cut flower beds. And I have not gotten any berries off of it yet, but it's cute and it looks a lot like a blackberry.
You think that maybe the reason you haven't gotten any berries is because the birds are beating you to them?
Probably, and everything else, because it's really short. I mean, it grows maybe 12 inches, maybe.
I just have no familiarity with dewberry.
It's kind of a Southern thing. So I don't grow raspberries. Why don't you tell us about raspberries?
There's another Family Handyman article I wrote. I have grown raspberries in the past. I will say that I never covered them to keep the birds off. And raspberries is another thing. They take a bit of maintenance in the spring. You got to cut those suckers back. And
yeah, and you have to keep track of which canes or which. I mean, I would have to go study it.
You do and you don't. So most raspberry varieties, they say it fruits twice, June and September. And so June is on old wood, September is on new wood. Right. You can make your life much simpler if you just say, I'll just get raspberries in September and cut the whole thing down in the spring. and let it come back up and have all new growth. You can do that.
You could do that. And then you talked about honeyberries. I've never grown honeyberries.
I have 2 honeyberries, and they're slow growing, but they are nice mounded shrubs with the bluish green foliage. They kind of just do their thing, and the fruit.
Have you ever eaten the honeyberry?
I have.
Was it good?
Tastes kind of like a blueberry.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're not like you're going to have a whole big bowl of them, but you can use them in a fruit salad or top some ice cream with them, or,
Interesting.
The birds are going to find them. I guarantee that.
Well, and you said that they're circumpolar, which we've talked about before.
Yeah, they're native around the North Pole, basically. So there's varieties native in North America, Canada, also Russia, also Japan. So they're kind of interesting. If you're going to get them, get native varieties that are native to the United States. But there's so much breeding going on. The other thing is honeyberries, and like all these other berries, you need 2 different varieties for pollination.
Right. Yeah. You need to research that. So to keep birds off them, you can net them, or you can just grow enough, because the truth is you can grow enough to get berries without, especially blackberries.
Yes. Yeah. If you have enough property, you can grow enough. Now, if you just got one little blueberry in a pot and you want to protect it, that's probably okay. She's shaking her head no.
You need 2 blueberries, because they cross-pollinate. Otherwise, you don't get very many. The reason I was shaking my head is I was like, every time mine got to the point where they were ready, the cardinals ate them all, and they loved them. And I would watch them, and they had a great time at my blueberry bush.
You're not thinking, hey, wait a minute, that's my food you're eating.
I did think that. And then I thought, well, okay, once those are done, I'm going to let that go, because I do not need to be growing blueberry shrubs and making sure the soil's acidic and all that stuff for the cardinals. There's other food.
So here's how I would sum up berries in the garden. They will attract birds. Mm-hmm. If you're intent on keeping them out, you're going to have to net them or something like that. But just grow enough to share. Just grow enough to share. Or just like, oh, I did that for the birds, like the serviceberry.
Yeah. I do that for my cherry tree too. Honestly, my cherry tree is much beloved by all the birds in my neighborhood. And I'm like, have at it. I've gotten cherries off of it probably 5 times, but a whole tree is enough to make 1 pie.
That's not a very big tree.
It's a pretty big tree, Carol. It just takes a lot of cherries.
I guess. I don't grow cherry trees because they tend to get a lot of disease in this area, cankers and things like that.
Well, if you're trying to grow eating cherries, they have trouble here too. This is a sour cherry tree.
Well, my neighbor was saying his cherry tree died, so he's going to get another one.
Well, there you go. And now they don't call those sour cherries anymore. They call them pie cherry trees.
That's a much nicer name, because sour cherry makes you think, oh, I don't want that.
Well, they are sour, but they are really good in pie. And I will say that fresh cherries and a fresh pie cherries and a cherry pie is just about as good as it gets, but it takes a lot of work. And it's always in June, and I leave town in June. So there you go. Too. All right. Next quote before we talk about our book.
Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. Langston Hughes.
Whew, Langston. That's, I don't know if that's a positive one or not. Maybe it's positive. All right. On the bookshelf, Tiny Plus Wild, Build a Small Scale Meadow Anywhere by Graham Laird Gardner. Yes, that's his last name. And we have a link to it. So what do you want to say about this book? Because it's not a big book. It is a small book.
Well, it's about the same size as some of their other gardening books. But the author, Graham, is by training a landscape designer, I would say. I'm not sure if he's an architect.
He's an architect, I think.
Okay.
We looked that up when we were talking about it the other day. I'm almost sure he's a landscape architect.
And so you'll find in here tips on design, and actually some designs that are sort of mapped out. And so, showing like, here's where the phase 1, the grasses, phase 2, phase 3. So he's got some interesting things like that. I will say, and I haven't completely gone through this book, he tends to use a lot of what I'll call plugs.
Yeah, we should explain what a plug is.
I was about to explain what a plug was.
Go for it.
It's a small plant that's it's basically in I'll say a tall, narrow container. Mm-hmm. You can hold it in your hand and then easily plant it by plunging the trowel in the ground, making a hole and dropping the plug in.
Everyone in Oklahoma right now is laughing about being able to just plunge a trowel into the ground because we have that horrible clay soil. But that's the theory, is that you have a prepared
Well,
bed.
here in paradise.
Hey, before I say anything, it says he's a landscape. I need to correct it. He has over 25 years of experience in landscape design and project management in public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Yes. He's worked with all kinds of people like the Denver Parks Department and stuff. So he is used to working on big scale planting areas for commercial and residential use.
Yes.
But back to paradise, where you can just plunge a trowel into the ground.
So the plugs, and it's if you can find them, here's the thing. A lot of people, they want to sell you a gallon container, which is going to be an expensive plant. But if you can find the specialty nurseries that specialize in these grasses and native plants, they'll often sell you flats of the plugs. And so you can plant for much less, or you could, I suppose, start them from seed.
Well, and that's one of the things we said is, how is this different from Mike Lizzotti's book, which was called Mini Meadows. And in his, because he owns a seed company, American Meadows, he talks mostly about seeds. And this guy, Mr. Gardner, who I don't know, talks about plugs more, because he worked on large scale company things, and they sell a lot of plugs. You can buy plugs from company as a residential gardener. You can buy plugs from nurseries like Prairie Moon, for example. Prairie Moon will often have, it's a native plant nursery, and it will often have the choice between a seed, buying some seeds, or buying plugs. And also milkweeds. A lot of the native milkweeds I want to say it's through Monarch Watch, but please don't come get me if I've got the wrong name. But one of the Monarch groups, they have every year you can buy native milkweeds for your area and plugs. Now, I'm going to say this. I have planted plug after plug after plug of native milkweeds up in my upper pasture. And I noticed, and I've also planted seed. I've done a lot of different things. I've noticed that this year I saw some native milkweed go to seed, and I was so happy. The seed pods were on there, and I just spread them everywhere. I mean, if you are an area that you can't water all the time consistently here, it's going to be harder to get plugs going, and maybe even seeds, because you got to water some.
Right.
And I know that's counterintuitive, kind of, because you would think native areas could stay all by themselves. They can somewhat, but if you really want it to be robust, you're going to have to water a little bit.
And I will say this too. If you are attracted to, say, the Lurie Garden in Chicago, which I know not everybody has been to, but if you look at the pictures, if you're, or you fall in love with Pete Oldoff's gardens with all the grasses and the flowers intermixed in between
with native plants,
forbs in a matrix, as they say.
Yeah, forbs in a matrix.
But you have a smaller property like I do. Mm-hmm. Tiny and Wild is a great book to get to be inspired on how to plant in that way. And so I'll call it a meadow. My little mini meadow started out at I'm going to say 10 by 16.
Yeah.
But it's starting to get shaded out on the two ends. So it's like a 10 by 10. And sometimes I think I need to rejuvenate it a little bit. So a book like Tiny and Wild is perfect for somebody like me, that I literally think that I have a 10 by 10 spot.
Well,
that's good for this.
One of the things I like about the book is it points out that you do have to plan out these spaces. I mean, people think you can just throw out some seeds and it'll work. And I think meadows are one of the hardest gardens types to make.
Yeah. Well, they sell wildflower mixes, and people say, well, I'll just throw out this wildflower mix. And when is my meadow going to be mature? And it's like, that's never going to, that's never going to work. Mm-hmm. That's never really going to work. So you do have to plan it out.
He has really good ideas for this, and even areas that are just around your mailbox or a hell strip or something like that. And let me just point out, at the Lurie Garden, they water, because I've been there when they were watering.
I've been there when they water too. Yeah.
So they water the Lurie Garden. Don't fool yourself. I think they also water the High Line, because you've got to have times during drought. And because the United States is a continental climate, our summers are droughty for much of the United States. Maybe not Indiana, except for in 2011 when I visited there.
Well, we were droughty last fall.
Well, there you go. So our climate is not like a Mediterranean climate, except for a couple of places in the U.S. So there you go.
So if you look in the acknowledgments, and you could tell by looking at the book, his editor is Jessica Walliser. And so sometimes it's not the author, but the editor. And when Jessica's done the editing, I always feel really confident that this is going to be a good book. And indeed it is. I mean, the pictures are very inspirational. The other person that he gives acknowledgement to is Kelly Norris, who wrote the book New Naturalism.
Right. And he knows a lot about Forbes and a Matrix.
Yes. And he connected Graham with Jessica. So I think this is a really nice book. This is staying on my shelf. I'm not going to get rid of this.
No, I'm not either. This is not one I'll give away. Partly because this is the type of gardening I do now more than ever. It's much easier to maintain than an English cottage garden. And as you mature as a gardener, you learn what works in your area. I suspect that picture. Okay. I just saw a picture on in the introduction, and I thought that looks just like Kelly's garden. Anyway, I think it's beautiful. I think we need to embrace this more in the US and not have quite so much. Like on page 13, they show manicured lawns everywhere. And then they show a lawn that has some native grasses in it, and then also some mowed areas. So very cool book. Very, very enjoyable.
Go to page 47.
Okay, 47 we talked about before. So what do you
he's got
about that?
The self-seeding amongst the rows in the vegetable garden. So you can see in that picture that some little flowers are coming up in between the rows that he's just let grow.
But those are not self-seeded. I don't buy that for an instant. Those were planted in there.
Cosmos and things. Well, whether planted or whatever.
Yeah, there's Cosmos and there's Salvia farinaceae in there. And I also see a marigold.
He says self-seed. Now, I do get Nicotiana and snapdragons at self-seed in my vegetable garden, and I let them stay where they're at if they're not in the way.
Oh, I do too. And I'm all for that. I mean, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't think this picture shows that personally.
Okay.
It looks to me like those were planted out. But yes, I'm all for self-seeding.
And maybe they look planted.
I'm all for flowers in the vegetable bed.
Maybe they look planted because he actually did weed out the ones that were in the way. Who knows? Tiny and Wild, Build a Small-Scale Meadow Anywhere by Graham Laird Gardner. We'll put a link to the book in the show notes.
Yes, and also in our Substack newsletter. It's a good book. I think it's got a lot of education in it. And they also tell you exactly what the plants do. There are big charts. So shall I do the next quote?
Please.
A bird does not sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song. Maya Angelou.
That is lovely.
We are revisiting some dirt this week.
Yes. And this, I'll let you go forward. We do not grow Nandina. And so it's about.
I do too.
Huh?
I grow it.
I don't. It's not hardy here.
Oh, you said we. We do not grow.
Oh,
Nandina.
I meant the we as in me, myself, and I.
Oh, you and the mouse in your pocket. So it's does Nandina kill birds? And the Nandina they're talking about is the Nandina domestica, that is the one that has red berries in the winter. So you will read this all over online, that Nandina is poisonous and it will kill birds. We want to refer you to a piece that was written by the Grumpy Gardener, Steve, Bender, in Southern Living, where he actually traces this down and researches it to its source. I don't think that Nandina berries kill birds technically, unless they're piggy birds.
Yeah. So in the article, they basically, the birds pigged it all down and they died from overeating, not so much that the berries were poisonous.
And it was cedar waxwings. And cedar waxwings, if you've ever had them in your garden, they fly in, they eat everything, and then they fly off. That's just what they do. And they love berries. Here, they love eastern red cedar berries. I have never, ever seen any bird eat any Nandina berries in my garden at all. I do have 2 original old Nandinas, and somebody's going to write in and go, that's terrible because you're going to kill the birds. I've never seen them go for them at all. Most of the Nandinas I grow are ones that don't have berries because they bred them for that, which there's some I really love, because I'll tell you what, nothing kills them. If you kill a Nandina, you're having a really bad year. And they add color in various times of the year too, and turn colors in the fall and in the early spring. So here's the thing. If you have an old Nandina domestica that has berries and you're worried about them, just cut them off.
Yeah, but we're kind of lazy then.
Go read this article, because he traces it back to the actual time that it was recorded. And they do, if I remember right, they do have a little bit of cyanide in the berries. A lot of things do. You don't want to eat them. Your grandchildren don't want to eat them. But I've never seen any bird eat them. But I can see cedar waxwings doing it, because they're very greedy little birds, and they just come in and go, wah, and eat everything.
I'm looking up the hardiness zone for these because I know we don't grow them around here.
You don't grow Nandinas at all? Maybe it's zone 6. Well, while she looks that up, I'll just say this.
Well, it says
just grow the varieties that don't have berries.
It says 6 to 9. And I will confess, I mean, I'm in 6, but that's a recent development. And I think I've seen Nandina at the store, and I'm thinking there's so many better shrubs. Don't buy that.
So here, sometimes you need them. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say. Nandinas help. They're a small shrub that helps kind of fill things out sometimes. Now, some people here hate them because they're so doggone easy. I don't hate them. I just use them sparingly.
There you go. Sparingly. All right.
And I've got 3 that came with the house, and they're still alive. I will say this, the ones that do have the berries sometimes reseed in your yard, which is another issue.
All right. I'm going to do a quote. I would like to paint the way a bird sings. Claude Monet.
I love that. I want to hear about your rabbit hole, because mine's rude and yucky.
So I found a lost lady of garden writing. I finally finished my research on her. Jean Hersey is her name. And this all came about.
Go Jean.
This all came about because on my post about month by month books, someone suggested her book called The Shape of a Year, which she wrote in 1967, and it is a month-by-month book.
That sounds familiar.
And so, well, I was going to check it out from the library, and I ended up buying a good used copy. Slapped me upside the face. I just don't need another book, but I did anyway, and I'm glad I did, because there's a lovely picture of her on the back cover that I put on the blog post. And I thought, oh, another nature writer or whatever. She was a garden writer.
Go her.
She wrote books like I Like Gardening, A Garden in Your Window, Carefree Gardening, Wildflowers to Know and Grow, The Woman's Book of Houseplants, Cooking with Herbs, Flowering Shrubs and Small Trees, The Woman's Day Book of Annuals and Perennials, Gardening and Being.
I like that first one. I like gardening. Could you get a book like that published today? No.
I would love to get a copy of that. The copies I found were like $35, and so that was 1940.
It would be fun to have a copy of that just on your shelf and facing you.
Yeah, if you found one with the dust cover. If it didn't have the dust cover, it wouldn't really.
No.
But that one's from 1941, and Gardening and Being, the last gardening book she wrote, was 1982. She was born in 1902. So at 80, she was still putting out gardening books. I think Gardening and Being is a reflection. She also liked to travel, and she wrote a book about travel to Guatemala. Another month by month book called A Sense of Seasons. And then after her husband died, she wrote a widow's pilgrimage and The Touch of the Earth. She wrote a couple of books with her husband. I mean, for not hearing about her, she was certainly a prolific writer. And so I had a little trouble finding her at first because I could find no obituary, which was kind of weird, I thought. But on the back flap, it said, that she grew up in New York City and lived in Weston, Connecticut. And that would have been 1967. And so that was the breakthrough I needed to find out. She was born in 1902. She died at the age of 94 in 1997. And she was at that time living in North Carolina in a retirement home. So I suspect she had one of her 3 children move there. So all of her quotes that you see online are from The Shape of a Year, and that's the only book that my library has. So very interesting lady. There was actually a census report from 1940 where she was living in Bronx, New York, where she grew up. She had a daughter and 2 sons at the time. Her husband was an advertising manager. He made $5,000 a year, which I have translated to $107,000 a year. As a writer, she earned $1,200, so that was $26,000. She had a cook that she paid $600 a year, which was $13,000 today's dollars, and a children's nurse who made $960 a year, which would be $21,000 in today's dollars. That was kind of interesting.
That's how she had time to write.
And
she had a cook and a nurse. Well, nanny.
There's another book called The Once and Future Gardener, which was put out in 2000, which is about garden writers from the early 20th century. And the author there said that Jean was a prolific writer. True that. But said she lived in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, which I could not find any record for that. But in 1962, she got an ASTA award, ASTA, for Best Garden Writing of the Year. I couldn't find anything about that. I'll put a link to the blog post.
She's impressive.
Yeah. Well, the impressive part is she was 80 when she wrote that last book. And so you're never too old. We're just in our prime. We're just in our
Keep
prime.
telling yourself that. All right. So you want to hear about my rabbit hole?
I suppose we must.
I got obsessed with the Murdoch trial. That's all we need to say about it. Yeah. I have been very, very interested in it. I've been interested in it for about 2.5 years, but it all came to a head this week because lawyer Murdoch actually, and that's how you pronounce his name, according to everybody down in South Carolina, Murdoch, even though it's spelled Murdaugh. He testified, which defendants don't usually do that.
So and I'm going to say that I am so sadly out of it. I had heard some of the trial live on the radio, and I thought, why is this trial being live?
Right.
And so you gave me the background of it. And now I think, oh my gosh, this has got television miniseries, or like Dallas back in the day.
It does. And if anybody wants to get caught up, if you're a true crime person, there's a Netflix series that is really well done, which kind of chronicles everything up to the trial itself, which the trial is for, because so much has happened in this family's lives. The trial is that he may have allegedly he murdered his wife and his youngest son, which is sad. That part's sad. But their whole lives are, for very wealthy people who ran Hampton County, South Carolina, they are ruthless. And anyway, that's all we need to say about that. Let's go to our garden commissions.
Yeah, we live such simple lives. As weather permits, I'm going to work outside. I'm going to tend seedlings inside. And that is pretty much it for me.
Pretty much here too. I'm working outside this afternoon because it's supposed to be nice. We still got a lot of wind from that storm last night because we're on the backside of it. You have in here, should I mention sowing poppy seeds?
Well, they say, spring is the time to cast them outside. And I didn't know if you had done that yet, or you were going to do.
Yeah, I did it in the middle of February. So I sowed my poppy seeds directly, and they're Shirley poppies. I didn't try to do the other kind. In fact, they are Shirley poppies, and their packages are in my drawer right here. And it's a variety called Mother of Pearl, which is pinks and whites. And I put those in the potager in 2 of the beds. We'll see what happens. And then last week I sowed my sweet peas outside after I soaked them, which I talked about last week. This week is about sowing lettuce, turnips, tatsoi, and radishes directly outside. And then I want those containers I showed you for potatoes.
Yes, they have a little flap you can open the bottom and then stick your hand in there and pull out the
I
potatoes.
think I'm going to buy those today.
You should buy those
from
today.
Amazon. We will link to those in our newsletter because I'm writing it and I will show them to you guys. And then the hellebores have started. I've started cutting things back because the hellebores are blooming, and boy, they make me happy. It is so when you don't have anything blooming. My winter honeysuckle is blooming. My hellebores are blooming. Oh, a few scillas.
I have crocuses, irises.
So the only crocuses I have left, Carol.
Yeah.
There's one that got planted by a bird or moved by a mouse or something, and it's out in my yard, and it's shiny like purple. But all my other crocus have been eaten by things.
Oh my gosh. I have hellebores. Yeah. The witch hazel's in bloom.
Mine's not.
I can't find winter aconite. I think that winter aconite does not like me. It does not come back.
You know, winter aconite is a strange thing because our friend Leonie, who lives in Rhode Island, she has a whole carpet of it. Here, I can get it very spotty. And I have planted bulbs and moved things around. I did see a couple of them. I think they've already bloomed.
I think I missed it. They are AWOL. So I will watch them.
The Iris hystroides and the Iris reticulata are blooming.
Very nice.
That's it.
That is lovely. Well, let's wrap this up because we have talked and talked and talked. Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we love a 5-star review that helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
And subscribe to our Substack newsletter, The Garden Angelist at substack.com, also linked to in our show notes.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing. Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or a one-time donation through PayPal.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate this week. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.